August 1944. A humid summer morning blankets the port of New Orleans. Massive ships loom against the sky, their steel hulls reflecting the sunlight as they await the arrival of captured soldiers from distant battlefields. German POWs, weary and wary, step onto American soil for the first time, eyes scanning unfamiliar surroundings. The smell of salt water mixes with the scent of coal and machinery. Their uniforms are dusty, boots scuffed from European mud. Yet the landscape is unlike anything they have seen. Sprawling docks, organized warehouses, and the hum of a bustling city untouched by recent combat. American guards stand at attention, rifles slung, observing the prisoners' cautious movements. Children on nearby streets peek through fences, curious about the strangers from across the ocean. A line of trucks waits to transport the POWs to camps inland, the wheels crunching over gravel. Whispers pass along the line, some fearful, some awestruck, at the contrast between their expectations and the reality before them. In this first contact with America, the soldiers confront a paradox. They are enemies in a foreign land, yet the order, abundance, and civility surrounding them signal a world far removed from the war-torn landscapes they have left behind. WWII mid-1944, the European theater of World War II had reached a critical juncture. Allied forces had successfully landed in Normandy, pushing German armies eastward, while Soviet forces advanced relentlessly from the east. Tens of thousands of German soldiers were captured during the intense fighting, facing the uncertainty of imprisonment. The United States, bound by the Geneva Convention, made a strategic and humanitarian decision: transport a significant portion of these prisoners across the Atlantic to camps within the continental U.S., far from the front lines. The logistics were formidable. Captured soldiers were first processed in temporary camps in Europe or North Africa, where they were identified, cataloged, and prepared for transport. Convoys of ships, guarded against U-boat attacks, carried prisoners across the Atlantic. The voyage could last weeks, confined to below-deck compartments, with soldiers enduring cramped conditions, seasickness, and the uncertainty of what awaited them in a distant land. Upon arrival at ports such as New Orleans, Baltimore, or New York, prisoners were transferred by train to inland camps, stretching across Alabama, Arizona, Tennessee, and other states. American military planners faced a dual challenge: uphold the standards of the Geneva Convention while maintaining security and order. Camps such as Camp Aliceville in Alabama and Camp Papago Park in Arizona were designed to house thousands of prisoners in structured environments. Barracks, mess halls, medical facilities, and recreational areas were carefully arranged. Soldiers were assigned work details ranging from maintenance to agricultural labor, with oversight provided by experienced officers and enlisted personnel. Daily routines were regimented yet humane. Reveille sounded in the morning, followed by roll call, breakfast, work assignments, and structured recreational periods. Meals were designed to meet nutritional standards far exceeding what many prisoners had experienced on European front lines. Fresh bread, eggs, meat, vegetables, and occasionally treats were provided. For soldiers accustomed to rationing, hunger, and deprivation, this abundance was disorienting. Diaries and letters from POWs recount their astonishment at clean barracks, warm meals, and opportunities for leisure. Security remained paramount. Despite the humane conditions, camps were enclosed with barbed wire, patrolled by armed guards, and equipped with watchtowers. Escape attempts were rare, partly due to the distance from European soil, the unfamiliar American terrain, and the structured routines that occupied prisoners' time. The system worked. Tens of thousands of German soldiers were contained without major incidents, a testament to careful planning and strict adherence to protocols. The decision to provide comfort and small indulgences, such as recreational activities, books, and occasional treats, served both moral and practical purposes. By maintaining prisoner morale, American authorities reduced the likelihood of unrest and escape. The approach also had propaganda value, demonstrating adherence to international law and contrasting American conduct with reports of brutality in other theaters of the war. The first weeks of arrival were often the most disorienting for POWs. Soldiers accustomed to the chaos of battlefields encountered order, abundance, and civility in a foreign land. Mess halls filled with laughter, barracks that offered privacy and hygiene, and recreational programs that encouraged engagement, all contributed to a sense of disbelief. Prisoners struggled to reconcile the image of the Americans as an enemy with the reality of the structured, generous environment in which they found themselves. The stage was set for a unique wartime experience. Men trained to endure deprivation were introduced to comfort, structure, and cultural differences. These first impressions of clean facilities, abundant food, and organized camps laid the foundation for moments of astonishment and human reflection. The story of German POWs in America was about more than captivity. It was about adaptation, cultural shock, and the unexpected encounters that would define their lives behind barbed wire. While the physical infrastructure of American POW camps impressed the arriving soldiers, it was the cultural and psychological contrast that left the deepest impression. Many German POWs had anticipated harsh conditions, barracks in disrepair, meager rations, and strict punishments, mirroring the austerity and deprivation they had witnessed or imposed on occupied territories in Europe. Instead, they found themselves in an environment that was orderly, secure, and unexpectedly generous. Meals were a source of particular astonishment. Bread was fresh, meat portions substantial, and vegetables plentiful, a stark contrast to the thin rations and subsistence food of European battlefields. For some soldiers, the first taste of ice cream or a cold Coca-Cola was incomprehensible, a sensory revelation that highlighted the abundance of the society holding them captive. These small indulgences were more than nourishment. They became symbols of a world operating on resources, structure, and civility rather than scarcity and fear. Recreational activities further emphasized the cultural divergence. POWs were encouraged to participate in sports, music, theatrical performances, and educational programs. Baseball games became weekly events, while some prisoners formed debate clubs or musical ensembles. These opportunities allowed prisoners to exercise creativity and intellect, offering relief from monotony and reinforcing discipline. The camps became microcosms of social and cultural interaction, challenging assumptions about the enemy and fostering a subtle form of cultural exchange. Psychologically, the environment produced a complex mix of emotions. Soldiers expressed gratitude, disbelief, and even guilt at the comforts provided. Letters and diaries recount moments of joy and astonishment, tempered by the awareness that battles raged elsewhere and comrades remained in danger. The contrast between life on the front lines and life behind barbed wire forced prisoners to confront their own expectations, values, and understanding of the enemy. The experience of abundance within captivity had a leveling effect. Fear and suspicion coexisted with curiosity and cautious appreciation. American military leadership recognized the importance of balancing structure with humane treatment. Camp commanders implemented strict routines for roll calls, work assignments, and leisure periods, ensuring security while minimizing tension. This careful planning reinforced order without creating hostility, demonstrating a pragmatic understanding of human behavior. Prisoners learned quickly that cooperation led to tangible benefits, consistent meals, recreational opportunities, and medical care, while disruption resulted in swift, fair consequences. The geographical and environmental context also played a role in shaping the experience. Camps were often located far inland, in regions unfamiliar to European soldiers. Summers in the southern United States were hot and humid. Deserts in the Southwest offered arid isolation, and sprawling farmlands contrasted sharply with European urban or battle-scarred landscapes. This unfamiliarity heightened prisoners' sense of dislocation, but also offered moments of wonder. Open skies, wide fields, and the rhythm of rural life provided a backdrop entirely removed from the destruction they had known. Together, these elements created a unique wartime microcosm. Soldiers confronted a mixture of restriction and freedom, deprivation and abundance, fear and curiosity. Every detail, from meals to recreation, from barracks to the surrounding landscape, shaped their perceptions of both the Americans and themselves. By establishing an environment that combined discipline, structure, and unexpected generosity, American POW policy created not just containment, but adaptation, reflection, and human engagement. These experiences set the stage for exploring the story from multiple angles. The human, tactical, technological, leadership, moral, and enemy perspectives that define life inside these American POW camps. Understanding these perspectives allows us to see how seemingly small experiences, ice cream, Coca-Cola, baseball, or theatrical performances, became pivotal moments in the soldiers' wartime experience. For the German prisoners, the transition to life in American camps was disorienting and, at times, astonishing. Men who had endured relentless artillery fire, shortages of food, and the constant threat of death now found themselves in barracks with clean floors, proper beds, and regular meals. Diaries and letters reveal a mixture of disbelief and cautious relief. The smallest comforts, a warm bath, fresh bread, or a scoop of ice cream, elicited emotions ranging from surprise to joy. Soldiers who had faced hardship for years were suddenly reminded of simple human pleasures. Shared laughter in mess halls, discussions over baseball games, and collective amazement at the abundance of food offered brief, fleeting moments of normalcy. These experiences provided psychological sustenance, helping men maintain morale, resilience, and a sense of identity within captivity. Tactical/operational angle. Transporting tens of thousands of POWs across the Atlantic was as much a strategic decision as a humanitarian one. By moving prisoners far from the front lines, the U.S. military minimized escape risks and freed up European supply lines for combat operations. Camps were strategically placed inland, often hundreds of miles from coasts, with natural barriers, armed guards, and watchtowers further ensuring containment. The logistical operation involved ships, rail transport, and careful planning to provide food, medical care, and security. From an operational standpoint, the system was a remarkable success. Prisoners were contained effectively, incidents were rare, and the effort demonstrated American organizational capabilities and attention to detail in wartime administration. Cultural angle. Cultural contrast was striking. Soldiers from Germany, accustomed to scarcity, discipline, and wartime deprivation, encountered a society that offered abundance, structured leisure, and human dignity. Ice cream, Coca-Cola, and clean facilities were not merely novelties. They were symbols of a vastly different social order. Recreational activities such as baseball, music, and theater highlighted the cultural differences between captors and captives. Prisoners had to navigate a complex emotional landscape. Wonder, suspicion, delight, and, occasionally, admiration for a society that could combine military efficiency with human generosity. These experiences challenged entrenched assumptions and offered opportunities for reflection on identity, values, and the enemy. Technological/material angle. Even the material environment emphasized the disparity between expectation and reality. Barracks were well constructed, equipped with bunks, heating or ventilation, and sanitation facilities far superior to wartime front lines. Kitchens and mess halls operated with industrial efficiency, producing thousands of meals daily. Recreational equipment, ice cream machines, and soda dispensers were tangible symbols of American industrial and logistical prowess. To prisoners, these systems were both bewildering and fascinating, representing a level of capability and resource allocation unimaginable on European battlefields. The infrastructure itself became a lesson in organization, efficiency, and cultural contrast, highlighting the sophistication of the society holding them captive. These four angles, human, tactical, cultural, and technological, provide a multifaceted view of life in American POW camps. Soldiers experienced a reality that combined security, indulgence, and cultural novelty. Each angle intersects, revealing not only the mechanics of captivity, but the profound psychological and emotional effects of humane treatment. By understanding these perspectives, we begin to see how small, everyday experiences, ice cream, soda, baseball games, took on enormous significance. They were not trivial moments. They shaped morale, behavior, and perception, creating a unique narrative that defined POW life in the United States. These foundations lead naturally into the next set of angles, which delve deeper into leadership, moral, enemy, and psychological perspectives. The administration of American POW camps relied heavily on structured, principled leadership. Commanders like Colonel Herman Reimer and Major General William H. Harrison oversaw thousands of prisoners, balancing security with humane treatment. Leaders implemented strict routines for roll calls, work assignments, meals, and recreational periods, while simultaneously ensuring that prisoners' basic needs were met. Decisions to provide structured leisure, nutritious meals, and recreational facilities were deliberate, reflecting both ethical responsibility and practical strategy. Leadership extended beyond enforcement. It involved modeling fairness and fostering respect. Prisoners were more likely to cooperate when they observed consistency and impartiality, reducing tension and enhancing the overall stability of the camp. Moral/ethical angle. Adherence to the Geneva Convention was central, but beyond legality, morality played a pivotal role. American policy emphasized humane treatment. Adequate food, medical care, sanitation, and recreational opportunities were considered essential. This moral stance distinguished U.S. conduct from the harsh conditions many POWs experienced in European or Pacific theaters. Soldiers' reactions ranged from disbelief to gratitude, highlighting the ethical impact of such treatment. Providing dignity in choice, ice cream, soda, baseball, educational classes, reinforced a sense of humanity, shaping prisoners' behavior, morale, and perception of their captors. Ethical considerations were not abstract. They were practical, fostering cooperation and reducing incidents of unrest. Enemy/external angle. Reports of American POW camps traveled quickly through German military channels. Many soldiers and officers were shocked to learn of the leniency, abundance, and recreation available to captured troops. Propaganda often depicted the Americans as ruthless and wealthy, yet the reality of orderly camps, nutritious meals, and leisure opportunities challenged these narratives. POWs themselves were caught in a paradox. They were trained to see Americans as enemies, yet they encountered care, structure, and comfort. This tension forced reflection on personal identity, allegiance, and a broader meaning of the war. The contrast between expectation and experience became a defining aspect of the POW narrative, influencing soldiers' post-war perspectives. Psychological/emotional angle. The psychological impact of camp life was profound. Prisoners, initially wary and suspicious, gradually adapted to the structured environment and small pleasures. The first taste of ice cream or a cold soda became emotional milestones. Participation in recreational activities, baseball, music, theater, or educational classes helped prisoners cope with boredom, homesickness, and the stress of captivity. These activities provided mental stimulation, promoted resilience, and encouraged social interaction. Diaries and memoirs reveal that such moments reduced anxiety, strengthened morale, and even fostered curiosity about the captors' culture. Camps became microcosms of psychological adaptation, demonstrating how humane treatment could shape behavior, stability, and long-term perception. Combined, these angles, leadership, moral, enemy, and psychological, complete a comprehensive understanding of life in American POW camps. Soldiers' experiences were multifaceted. They were shaped by human kindness, strategic planning, ethical considerations, and cultural contrasts. Small indulgences, structured routines, and opportunities for reflection intersected to create a unique wartime microcosm. These insights naturally lead to the climax/turning point, where prisoners' astonishment and adaptation converge into defining, unforgettable moments inside the camps. It was a sweltering afternoon in the summer of 1944. The sun poured over the barracks, casting long shadows across the dusty campgrounds. Inside the mess hall, a low murmur of curiosity rippled among the German prisoners. The air was thick with the scent of sugar and cream, an aroma utterly foreign to men accustomed to meager rations and wartime austerity. At the center of the hall, a freshly stocked ice cream freezer hummed softly, alongside crates of Coca-Cola, their glass bottles glinting with condensation. A young corporal, skeptical yet intrigued, approached the counter. The first taste of cold vanilla melted on his tongue, and disbelief flickered across his face. Whispers passed along the line. "This, Coca-Cola." Laughter and chatter followed. Soldiers, hardened by years of combat, found themselves sharing something entirely new, a collective astonishment at abundance. For a fleeting moment, the war, with its violence and deprivation, seemed impossibly distant. Outside, recreational activities further amplified the sense of wonder. Baseball games were underway on the nearby field, with prisoners and American personnel observing, cheering, and sometimes laughing together. Improvised musical performances echoed through the camp, while some prisoners participated in educational classes, learning English or technical skills. Every small indulgence, a cold drink, a slice of pie, a game of baseball, served as a cultural shock, underscoring the stark contrast between their expectations and the reality of American captivity. This was more than novelty. It was a psychological pivot. Soldiers who had endured hunger and fear for years were now confronted with comfort and choice. Some recoiled at the generosity, suspecting a trick, while others embraced it, forming lines for seconds, experimenting with flavors, and exchanging smiles with unlikely comrades. The communal experience, shared astonishment, tentative joy, and fleeting laughter, created bonds among the prisoners, even as it challenged their ingrained perceptions of the enemy. Yet beneath the delight, tensions simmered. Officers grappled with maintaining discipline amid indulgence. Some prisoners debated the morality of enjoying such luxuries while comrades still fought and died overseas. Letters sent home oscillated between awe and incredulity. Reports of ice cream and Coca-Cola traveled faster than any formal dispatch, shaping the perceptions of families and fellow soldiers back in Europe. German command in occupied territories noted these accounts with a mix of bewilderment and concern, fearing that the pampered image might erode obedience or loyalty among troops still fighting. At the same time, camp leaders observed these reactions closely. They recognized that controlled indulgences could function as both reward and restraint, reinforcing order while humanizing the captors. Recreational programs, food treats, and structured leisure were no accident. They were deliberate instruments of strategy, blending ethics with psychology. For the prisoners, every indulgence was layered with meaning. A taste of home, a lesson in cultural difference, and a subtle reminder of their dependence on American organization and restraint. By late afternoon, the scene had evolved into something almost surreal. Soldiers, once defined by uniformity, fear, and routine, moved with tentative ease across the compound. They shared ice cream cones, tossed baseballs, and laughed quietly at jokes in broken English. The moment was fleeting, yet its impact was profound. The simple, sensory pleasures, the sweetness of sugar, the chill of ice cream, the fizziness of cola, acted as gateways to reflection, camaraderie, and cultural adaptation. It was in this convergence of surprise, delight, and psychological adjustment that the first defining climax of the American POW experience emerged. Here, in the midst of barbed wire and strict schedules, German soldiers encountered a form of captivity unlike any other, one that combined security, structure, indulgence, and humanity. These moments would echo throughout their memories, shaping personal narratives long after the war ended and the gates were opened. This scene sets the stage for further interactions and cultural exchanges, tensions and joys that defined POW life in America. The full consequences of these small indulgences on morale, discipline, and the prisoner's perception of the enemy are explored in the next section. As the weeks progressed, the novelty of small indulgences, ice cream, Coca-Cola, baseball games, evolved into a defining rhythm of daily life in the camps. Soldiers who had arrived skeptical, tense, and wary now navigated a world of structure, predictability, and controlled leisure. This transformation was not simply a matter of comfort. It was a profound psychological shift, one that reshaped attitudes, behaviors, and perceptions. Recreational programs became central to the prisoners' adaptation. Baseball games drew crowds of soldiers cheering in unison, sharing laughter despite language barriers. Musical performances and theater productions allowed creativity to flourish, providing mental escape from the monotony of captivity. Educational classes offered instruction in English, technical skills, and mathematics, granting prisoners a sense of purpose and intellectual engagement. These programs were carefully curated, designed to occupy time constructively, reduce tension, and reinforce cooperation. The prisoners quickly learned that participation in these activities carried tangible benefits: better treatment, small privileges, and social approval. Nutrition and medical care further reinforced this transformation. Daily meals were consistent, abundant, and balanced, contrasting sharply with the scarcity experienced on European front lines. Soldiers gained weight, recovered strength, and maintained health, while medical officers reported a decline in illnesses related to malnutrition or exposure. Small indulgences such as ice cream or soda became symbolic markers of a broader environment, one where human dignity was acknowledged, even in captivity. Psychologically, these experiences fostered a complex blend of emotions. Soldiers felt gratitude, disbelief, and at times guilt for enjoying comfort while comrades still faced the chaos of war. Letters and diaries reveal astonishment at the civility and efficiency of their captors. The contrast between expectation and reality prompted reflection. Many prisoners questioned their preconceptions of Americans, reconsidered notions of the enemy, and internalized lessons about resilience, adaptation, and human decency. At the leadership level, camp commanders observed these effects closely. The strategy of controlled indulgence proved remarkably effective. Prisoners were healthier, more cooperative, and less prone to unrest. By blending structure with humane treatment, the American administration demonstrated an understanding of psychology in captivity. Discipline was maintained not merely through fear of punishment, but through incentives, cultural engagement, and the tangible comforts of daily life. This approach reinforced compliance while cultivating a sense of fairness and respect. Cultural exchange extended beyond mere observation. Prisoners interacted with guards, Red Cross volunteers, and even local civilians during work details or supervised visits. For many soldiers, these interactions were the first exposure to American society, language, and customs. Shock, curiosity, and fascination became recurring emotional threads. The experience left an indelible impression. Prisoners observed order, efficiency, and humaneness on a scale far exceeding their expectations, creating lasting memories that would influence post-war perspectives. The culmination of these experiences, the daily routines, the recreational engagement, the small luxuries, marked a true turning point in the POW experience. What began as awe and skepticism became adaptation, reflection, and in some cases, quiet admiration. Prisoners learned to navigate a complex emotional landscape where captivity and comfort coexisted, where fear and delight intersected, and where human decency could be exercised without compromising security. By the end of this period, American POW camps had achieved something extraordinary. They maintained strict containment while simultaneously providing an environment of psychological, emotional, and cultural engagement. Soldiers emerged from this period with strengthened health, improved morale, and transformed perceptions of both the enemy and themselves. The seemingly trivial acts, ice cream cones, baseball games, theatrical performances, have become pivotal moments in the narrative of captivity, defining the unique American approach to POW management during World War II. These developments naturally lead to the aftermath, where the consequences of this approach on morale, discipline, health, and post-war perception come into sharp focus, shaping the enduring legacy of German POW experiences in the United States. As the war drew to a close in Europe in 1945, the long-term consequences of the American POW experience became increasingly apparent. Soldiers who had spent months or even years behind barbed wire in the United States returned home with memories that contrasted sharply with the destruction, scarcity, and deprivation that dominated life in Germany. The small indulgences and humane treatment they had encountered, ice cream, Coca-Cola, baseball games, and musical performances, were frequently recounted in letters, diaries, and post-war interviews, often described with a mixture of disbelief and nostalgia. These experiences were transformative, leaving a lasting imprint on both individual perspectives and collective memory. For many prisoners, the American approach challenged deeply held assumptions. Soldiers who had been conditioned to see Americans as merciless enemies now recognized organization, civility, and ethical conduct. Accounts of orderly camps, nutritious meals, and structured leisure contrasted starkly with German wartime propaganda and with the privation soldiers had faced on the front lines. These reflections fostered a nuanced understanding of the enemy, influencing post-war attitudes and, in some cases, facilitating reconciliation. Former POWs carried impressions of American society, technology, and governance, subtly shaping the perceptions of family, friends, and communities back home. The human consequences were tangible. Prisoners returned healthier, both physically and mentally, than many might have expected after years of conflict. Medical reports from the camps documented improvements in weight, strength, and resilience, while psychological effects were equally evident. Soldiers expressed appreciation, curiosity, and occasional guilt for the comfort they had experienced, revealing an emotional complexity rarely associated with captivity. Even small gestures, a scoop of ice cream, a baseball game, or a musical performance, carried symbolic weight, representing the potential for dignity, compassion, and cultural exchange amidst the hardships of war. At the institutional level, the success of the camps became a case study in military management and ethical conduct. The careful balance of security, discipline, and humane treatment demonstrated that operational objectives and moral responsibility could coexist. The lessons learned informed both contemporary and future military practices, showing the humane treatment of prisoners could enhance order, cooperation, and long-term compliance. Reports and evaluations highlighted the practical benefits of recreation, structured routines, and small indulgences, reinforcing the value of ethics and strategic planning. Culturally, the impact extended beyond the camps themselves. POWs carried back not only physical health, but also impressions of American customs, behaviors, and values. The experiences of leisure, abundance, and civility stood in sharp contrast to the wartime hardships endured in Europe. Many prisoners noted the efficiency and generosity of their captors, leaving an indelible impression that would shape post-war relations and influence collective memory. In this sense, the camps functioned as sites of both containment and subtle diplomacy, demonstrating that the treatment of prisoners could have lasting social and cultural ramifications. Ultimately, The aftermath of these experiences underscores the broader significance of humane treatment in wartime. By combining security, structure, and controlled indulgence, American POW camps achieved more than logistical containment. They fostered psychological stability, cultural reflection, and ethical modeling. Soldiers returned to Europe not only as former prisoners, but as witnesses to a system that had honored their humanity, even amidst conflict. This reflection on consequence and legacy sets the stage for the final reflection/closure, where the philosophical and human significance of these experiences is considered. How a simple scoop of ice cream or bottle of Coca-Cola could reveal profound truths about compassion, morality, and resilience in wartime. The story of German POWs in American camps is deceptively simple, yet deeply revealing. It is not a tale of battles or strategy, but of humanity, the small gestures that illuminate the capacity for kindness even amid the vast machinery of war. For soldiers hardened by years of deprivation, the sweetness of ice cream, the chill of a cold Coca-Cola, or a sunny afternoon baseball game became more than sensory experiences. They were symbols of dignity, civility, and a world operating on principle rather than chaos. These moments underscore a fundamental truth. War is measured not only in victories and losses, but in the treatment of those most vulnerable. The American approach demonstrated that ethics and strategy could coexist. By providing sustenance, comfort, and structured leisure, the U.S. military fostered order and cooperation while affirming the humanity of men who were, moments before, considered the enemy. Ice cream, baseball, and music became metaphors for resilience, curiosity, and cultural exchange, proving that even in confinement, human spirits adapt, endure, and find joy. The legacy of these camps extends beyond individual memory. POWs return home with impressions that reshape perceptions of America, influenced post-war reconciliation, and highlighted the psychological and moral dimensions of warfare. They remind us that acts of care, no matter how small, carry consequences that outlast battles and campaigns. In these stories, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A scoop of ice cream, a bottle of soda, a friendly game on a field. These became testimonies to the power of compassion in shaping human experience. Ultimately, the experience of German POWs in the United States is a lesson in empathy, moral courage, and resilience. It demonstrates that even in war, there is space for dignity, reflection, and small joys that connect us as human beings. These moments endure as symbols of compassion in an age defined by destruction, offering a quiet but powerful reminder. History is shaped not only by strategy and weaponry, but by the choices we make to preserve humanity, even in the darkest of times.